Okay, good evening and welcome to the first premiere, inaugural, introductory, trial, pilot, you can guess I don't think there's going to be a second, episode of Speaking Out Back, the Big Debate. Tonight we have two champion teams, each made up of three finely honed intellectual athletes at the very peak of their powers. The motion before the House tonight is that people who can't paint shouldn't pretend to paint portraits. On this side, the affirmative, we have the traditionalists. Mike Howard, Mark Horton, Tony Webber. Brought up in the strict cult of the old, where children who cannot correctly draw and shade a sphere at age 4 are thrown from the nearest cliff top, where the term abstract is just a cheap exercise on a home shopping channel. And it says pause and apologise for jokes, so take that as read. Facing them on this side for the negative are the new wavers, Kent Buchanan, Kim Goldsmith and Jack Randall, all big hair, frills and dark eyeliner. A team who've never seen a crayon mark on a wall from an 8-month-old that did not match, if not exceed, the beauty of the Sistine Chapel. Where if the thing you've painted looks like the thing you painted, then you haven't tried. The rules for this epic battle are simple. Each speaker will have 7 minutes to speak. A bell will sound at the 5-minute mark, then again at the 7, and then continually after 8 minutes until they're forced to sit down. After each speaker has spoken, there will be a 10-minute break before each team returns for a brief 10 or 15-minute free-for-all, where I give fair warning the people in the front seats might get wet. After this, the winning team will be determined by crowd acclaim, which simply means how loud you clap and cheer. Now, we could save all the effort and just do it now, but that might spoil some of the fun. So, during the debate, if you feel the need for another drink, just grab the attention of the cafe staff. You won't need to go to the bar, and they'll come and take an order. So let's begin. He's a man with a van, a plan, and possibly a fan. By day, he runs a foster home for wayward pot plants, but by night, he is the masked curator. He owns the hand that holds the pen that writes the cheque for the biggest art prize in Dubbo. Ladies and gentlemen, Mike Cowell.
Thank you, Andrew. And thank you for the invitation. You mentioned that you thought there were some barriers, and time will tell. And hello to everybody.
Hello.
I believe it's a sellout. I have seen bigger crowds around a dead snake. And our esteemed opposition. Right, you're looking as stylish as ever. Kim, you're looking particularly lovely today.
Oh, thank you, Mum.
And Kent, you're here. Can't hear you, sorry. So what of my team? Even though I only have a relatively minor interest in the arts, I thought it prudent that I get some expertise on the team. Mark Horton is a particularly fine artist, but I don't think he takes himself perhaps as seriously as he should. He also doesn't want an argument. And Tony Webber might prove to be an interesting choice to some. Has strong opinions on matters, but the reason I actually asked Tony is because he has in recent times played the world's best private art collection to visit. The Catholic Church has proved to have a pretty good eye for art over the years, and we'll probably mention that at some stage. So what of the subject tonight? There won't be any last-minute changes to the subject, will there?
No.
I did see an advert in the Weekender mentioned portrait or parody. I'm kind of assuming that was in reference to the arts winner, Tim Scorria's work. There's probably no bigger fan of Scoria than me. I think he's been our greatest painter for a long time. probably, where portrait or parody is concerned, I'd like to add another tweet, and that of the word potential. I think it's very innovative by the New South Wales Gallery trustees to include portraits on potential. And when the tour is finished, I hope Tim gets the chance to finish the painting. There are some other very fine works in there. It's very typical of another year in the arts book, where there's some great, there's some moderate, and there's some probably the less said the better. But as for the subject tonight, I think we're going to be thoroughly enlightened by the opposition. I'm here to find out where I've been going wrong. And leave it up to my teammates to get on the front foot. Please, there's the door wide open behind us, make a fast exit move. It's interesting that our age groups are around about the same. We're all types of the ages, Mark and Tim and I. Mark and Tony and I. We had a great time in the 80s, what we can remember it. It's a period of time where Australian art realism came to the fore, and it's in recent times probably been on the back foot a little bit. But it is fair to say that the vast majority of the public probably prefer. I'm probably going to wind up at that. I know there's a couple of minutes left, so I'll look forward to a little chance to robust that.
Okay. He describes himself only a couple of days ago, actually, as a know-nothing bloke from the bush, and his friends tend to agree. But those who don't know him all that well see a razor-sharp mind with an opinion on everything, and the uncanny ability to repeat that opinion loudly until you agree with him too. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Horton.
Thanks for coming along, the bravest people in Dubbo tonight. And seriously, the only qualification I have in art is I can shear a sheep in 3 minutes. Or I used to be able to, I don't know if I can anymore. But I hope that it's art you're interested in and not being polite, and enjoy each other's social company for their differences, not each other's similarities. So for the next 7 minutes, the politeness gloves are off, and it's you, our team, that'll be the winners for tonight's discussion. When is an artist not an artist? Put simply, when they dish up crap. The question is not whether people who can't paint portraits shouldn't paint portraits, but the answer is they shouldn't pretend to paint portraits. And whether they should be allowed to do so outside of the privacy of their own home, or more importantly, should organisers of portrait exhibits wander outside the definition of a portrait, which is quite clearly spelled out. And should they then try to convince you after the fact that it's art? The definition of art and artist and what is a portrait is pretty clear. The Oxford Dictionary says it states that a portrait is an artistic representation of a person in which the face and its expression is predominant. It displays the likeness, personality and even the mood of that person. Art is a philosophy that defines itself as a reproduction, portraying expression, communication of emotion and other values. And the artist is the person that can portray that through their art. If the art doesn't, then it's not art and it's not a portrait. Can a portrait be a parody? Of course it can, as a deliberate imitation of the style, genre or the artist's work or the object or the subject of it. So, if you can't see and understand the expression on the face of the person in the portrait, it's not a portrait. And it's not art unless it presents a position or an opinion that you can grab onto and make you feel inspiration, reflection, make you cry, infuriated, run away, join a church, vomit, file a lawsuit or any other involuntary reaction. By this definition, it's the art of portraiture, and that's the end of the discussion. So for the next few minutes, I'm going to indulge you. About 3 months after the 1968 Archibald was run and won, I just turned 5 and spent about 3 months with my parents travelling around the outback of the Northern Territory being homeschooled while Dad was doing building maintenance work on outstations. One of our camps was at Stanley Chasm, and in the evening we walked up to the top of the ridgeline as the sun set and met a fellow who had his easel planted right on the edge of the crevasse, and it's a pretty deep crevasse. And with careful consideration he was placing the oil on the canvas in a way that bared no resemblance to the scene that I was looking at. And the artist was Lloyd Reeves, who 3 months earlier had been the winning subject of the 1968 Archibald by William Pidgeon. Lloyd Reeves painted portraits of ministers and was twice a Wins winner and won the Jack Manson Prize for landscapes at 91 years of age. A few minutes later he was also a lifesaver, having plucked me from the bottom of the gorge after I fell off the ledge. But whatever my 5-year-old opinion at the time of the incomplete painting, I stand by it now as an unsullied opinion as an observer of art. And I think that's even supported from the opposite perspective of what was relayed to us earlier, that all 5-year-olds think they're artists, until the art mafia bashes it out of us by the age of about 23. I adore Lloyd Reeves' paintings and yet remain ambivalent to his paintings. I love his drawings and remain ambivalent to his paintings. But that doesn't diminish his great talent as an artist or as a lifesaver, and that's the point of art. Like the 5-year-old me, art should be polite, it should be shocking, confronting, confounding, compelling, confusing, along with inspirational, amazing and gut-wrenchingly infuriating and above all questioning and thought-provoking. And it's ironic, as I stand here now talking to you, that art should rarely be discussed from a preconceived perspective, or come with instructions. Possibly the oldest painting in history has been found in France and dates to 37,000 years ago. There was a moving charcoal on the wall of a cave depicting vaginas. Apart from clearly being done by a young male or an emancipated female at the time, I wonder if it was called contemporary or modern for its time, or the artist was revealed, or what they were trying to say, or whether he was just a naughty boy drawing on the bedroom wall. The first portrait burst onto the scene about 10,000 years later, also in France. But sometime between now and then we ran out of, or were flooded with so many original ideas, that artists decided that LSD was a better option. Throwing paint to the wall, firing from a cannon, getting an elephant to do it, dribbling it from a step ladder, became a new contemporary must-have art. Painting parodies of bottoms, pendulous, breasts shockingly, and wait for it, yes, vaginas and penises, rocked the conservatism of a liberated modern society. At a recent exhibition in New York of sphincters caused worldwide discussion. Why, I don't know, everyone has one. Then we really evolved and tried painting emotions, smells, sounds, more or less the ADHD and STDs were required to interpret this lot. Until today we mostly struggle, or we juggle, to shock, promote thought and emotion, all the time trying not to offend, or better still, just offending a bit. Contemporary artists achieve this really well by presenting an abstract that mostly fits with the fashion decor of the modern family home. Objects that say I had time and paint on my hands. I think this piece is different, so it must be art, and therefore I must be an artist. Blue poles are the last time I can remember a modern piece of work invoking national or international discussion. It wasn't because of its value as art, it was simply because of its value in cost, and we paid for it. It moved us all right towards higher taxes, in part getting rid of the government. And there's an object down in the National Gallery called Black on Black. It's an untreated piece of chipboard painted with house paint that you bought for $20,000. As art, it is a shrine. It's a shrine to impulse buying, suspect marketing, nepotism, poor management of public funds and appalling auditing processes. But to make it all worthwhile, and the artist completely justified, they place a neat A3 piece of paper next to it, explaining what it is all about. And it takes longer to read the piece of paper than it does to view the artwork. It explains how the presenter was compelled to present the work by the contrived torment brought about by their emergence in post-Victorian feminist struggle of their gender-confused father. Perhaps a novel that is an art description should read, "Here is my struggle I have suffered. So I must be an artist. Please convince me. Please help me convince myself." Oh, and I hope you like the pretty colours hanging nearby. I've placed there for fun, stray purposes. Is there an emotional eulogy telling how you should feel standing next to the Mona Lisa? No. There's just a sign saying, keep moving and let the others have a look too. Your entry fee hasn't been calculated for you to be able to appraise the artwork, merely say you've seen it. And Mona's wry smile, with songs and books that have been written about, would hold very little intrigue if Leonardo had a brief telling us how he gave her that smile in the first place. He let art do its communicating for him. Assessing art is like assessing wine. You, the consumer, are always right. You need no higher education, nor someone telling you how to interpret it. When it's vinegar, you know it's vinegar. There are more people in this healthy society than is healthy in society clamouring for ageing velvet prints, Elvis prints, and motel rooms everywhere. No weary travellers aren't going to judge the faded monochrome images of palm trees set in sun's outback scene prancing horses with hair extensions. Then again, it must be art because there are more emotions expressed in motel rooms than there should be legal. Art, like wine, should move you to conversation, creativity, divergent of thoughts, not consensus of thought. And when your 5-year-old says it's crap, they're right. And when your 14-year-old has found a new passion in the human form, it's realism they're looking for, not an abstract interpretation. And they want to be the explorer of that form. If anyone tries to tell you that art is not a portrait, walk away and get the last cold party pie and enjoy the quiet indigestion that follows. People who can't paint portraits shouldn't pretend to paint portraits. I say let them do whatever rings their creative bell. Just don't pretend to. And don't have a pseudo-intellectual conversation with me about why it's hanging in a public space, or try to convince me what I think it should be. Let the object speak for itself, or not.
His steely eyes peer out from the weekender every Saturday morning, undressing you as you read his column, which is artfully placed just after John Ryan so that no matter what he writes, it will look moderately sane. He's used to telling people what to think and when exactly to think it. Ladies, and just the ladies this time, Tony Webber.
Thanks very much, Andrew, and thanks to everybody for turning up today. We only had 4 days' notice for this esteemed event, so our preparation, or certainly my preparation, might be a little bit lagging. I prefer to think that it reflects the fact that our argument is self-evident. Nonetheless, I hope to give it some gentle support here tonight. Oliver Cromwell famously said to his portraiture that he wanted him to paint him warts and all. Facial warts, of course, otherwise fairly colourful portrait that way, hanging in the back room. But my point is simply that a good portrait tells us more about the subject than mere words. It reveals the truth about the subject, through their eyes as windows of the soul, their posture, their garments, their demeanour. We can imagine that portrait of Napoleon astride his white stallion, and the stallion rears, and its nostrils flare, and he's in all his battle regalia, and you can't help but think, what an insecure little dickhead. Because, come on, I'm on the clock. But when we embellish the truth, then it's not true anymore. When we fiddle with reality, it's decoration. It doesn't reveal us an insight at all. For example, when we smile for photos that were taken here tonight and hold our guts in, that's not a true representation of who we are. The photos where we look like that, we delete. But that's what we look like. That was our natural form at the time when the camera caught us. That's the truth. Cave paintings, for example, we have heard mentioned earlier from my esteemed colleague Mark. They're always the chap with the pointy spear, and he's got mastodon and bison, and Oog has bothered to paint all these massive animals of the savannah. I put it to you, Mr. Oog, that you didn't kill any of them with a pointy stick. When you ate mammoth meat, it had already died of some other cause. You may well have clubbed the occasional camp dog to death and eaten it in hard times. You didn't ever kill a mammoth with a sharpened stick. It's a distortion of reality. When we embellish it, it loses the truth. Mike made reference, as did Kim, to the Sistine Chapel. And we saw that image earlier of God gently fingering Adam. And I think it's worth noting Kim's point about Michelangelo's mother having marble in her milk. I knew she was a hard bitch, but I didn't know it extended quite that far. But if we give our attention to that image, from the neck up, God looks like an 80-year-old. He's got long grey hair and a wizened face and a beard. From the neck down, he looks like Charles Atlas. He could play for the Green Bay Packers. And I put it to you, this is the risk in when we change reality, we fiddle with reality, we lose any semblance of reality. 80-year-olds don't have ripped biceps unless they appear in decoration, and that's what I say to Michelangelo's engagement. Portraits must be a true representation so we can harvest the person's character, gain an insight into who they are. Why? Because we are beasts born of the African savannah. Shakespeare said, "We know what we are, but know not what we may be." And this is the insight that good art, professional art, affords us. Throughout history, the portrait has played a key role in telling us that story. Niceness will expose itself willingly. Breakfast television, fashion, Facebook, a big, safe, sunny, smiley sandpit for bland, conformist puppets. But the darkness is ever present, lurking behind a facade of airbrushing and interpretation, commercial exploitation and pretense. We have spoken here of the how of art. Let's explore the why. Let's explore this darkness and consider what we are, in the right circumstances, all capable of. I love how TV legitimises alcoholism. Because if you came round to my place and I was drinking in the cupboard and you opened the door and I still like that, and it'd be pathetic and you'd be embarrassed and the whole thing would be a very, very unsettling episode. If you come round to my place and I've got the TV on and I'm drinking on my own, that's fine. I can be sitting there in my underwear, scratching myself intimately, cleaning my navel with a chip. But so long as I've got the TV on and you walk in, I'm Sean Connery at the roulette wheel. And you look at me and you think, you are really going places. You have done something with your life. The trick, of course, is you've got to watch whatever's on. You can't turn the TV off or you're back to your cupboards. There's a documentary on people rescuing orangutans from captivity, and the radio was saying, you know, some use box to box, the tourists, others for prostitution. Now, there's a couple of phrases that really make me sit up and take notice. I ran into one of your old girlfriends the other day, is one of them. You mind if we search the car, Mr. Webber, is another one. And pretty much anything involving great apes and the sex trade. And it turns out in isolated logging camps, this is true, with no avenue for sexual outlet, the workers there pay to copulate with suitably restrained orangutans. Good people, this is what we are capable of. Away from the scrutiny, this is one example of one of the myriad of complexities that is mankind. It fascinates me as to how that little community of huts adapts to the fact that men pay to have sex with these poor brutes. And let's bear in mind, these men aren't there in a remote logging camp because they've just come into some money. They haven't recently come across a lucrative inheritance and thought they'd go and have a look around. They're desperately poor, and yet they will pay money to abuse these poor beasts. The urge outweighs any of that humanity. That's the darkness within us in the right circumstances. And I love the idea that somehow the community adapts around those particular dynamics. So they're down having a drink at, you know, Larry's Tavern in this small village, and his mate says to him, "Another beer, Terry?" And Terry says, "Oh no, a bit of an early night for me." And his friend says to him, "You're not going down to the hut with the orangutan?" And he says, no, I'm just stretching my legs." And his mate says to him, "But your hut is that way." And he says, "Yeah, but I'm stretching my legs. I mean, you're not the village police, are you? I can walk where I like." And his mate says to him, "Last time you stretched your legs, you came back an hour later with scratches all over your face and clumps of hair missing." And we can't even defend these people by saying orangutans are good-looking animals. The only people who consider orangutans good-looking are men in isolated Borneo logging camps and men currently in a sexual relationship with a warthog. And ladies and gentlemen, like the humble warthog, we are beasts of the savannah who should always be captured, warts and all, whether we are Puritans like Cromwell or shagging apes and boys.